Hello everyone. Welcome to today's session on Jacques Derrida's seminal essay, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of the Human Sciences. This essay is not just another theoretical text, it marks a turning point in how we think about language, meaning, knowledge, and interpretation. So, as you watch this video, I want you to listen not as passive learners but as thinkers who are willing to question what feels stable and familiar. Let us begin with the historical moment in which this essay was born. In the year 1966, Derrida presented this paper at an international symposium held at Johns Hopkins University titled The Languages of Criticism and the Sciences of Man. At that time, structuralism dominated intellectual life. Scholars believed that beneath culture, language, myths, and society, there existed deep structures that governed meaning. These structures were assumed to be stable, scientific, and reliable. Derrida does not walk into this space as a destroyer of structuralism. Instead, he enters as a careful listener. And then he raises a question so subtle yet so powerful that it quietly shifts the entire intellectual landscape. He asks us to rethink the very idea of structure itself. Traditionally, a structure was understood as a system of internal relations. Every element within the structure gained meaning through its relationship with other elements. But, and this is crucial, every structure was also believed to have a center. This center anchored the structure. It fixed meaning, it limited confusion, it gave the system authority, presence, and stability. The center in Western thought could be God, reason, truth, consciousness, origin, or even man himself. Whatever its form, the center functioned as a guarantee. It assured us that meaning would not endlessly slide, it kept interpretation under control. But Derrida noticed a paradox. The center governs its structure, yet it does not fully belong to the structure. It is both inside and outside at the same time. And once we begin to notice this contradiction, something extraordinary happens. Derrida calls this moment as an event. The event is the realization that center is not natural or eternal. It is not metaphysical truth. It is something historically produced, something invented to manage uncertainty. And once this realization occurs, the structure begins to loosen. When the center loses its absolute authority, the structure becomes open, meaning becomes unstable, interpretation begins to move. Derrida calls this moment free play. This is the moment where post structuralist thinking begins. Now let us pause here and understand what Derrida is not saying. He is not claiming that structures do not exist. He is also not suggesting that meaning disappears. What he challenges is the belief that structures are fixed and that meaning is permanently anchored. Structuralism believed that all cultural phenomena could be explained through stable systems governed by universal rules. Meaning, according to structuralists, emerged from difference, but within a controlled system. Derrida agrees that difference produces meaning, but he rejects the idea that this process can ever be closed as or final. This brings us to the idea of the center as metaphysical guarantee. The center prevented endless substitution. It promised truth, it calmed intellectual anxiety, but once we recognize that the center itself is a construction, we experience what Derrida describes as an epistemological crisis, a crisis of knowing. This crisis can feel uncomfortable, but Derrida insists that it also be protective because once meaning is no longer fixed, it becomes dynamic, relational, and contextual. This is where free play truly matters. Free play for Derrida is the movement of meaning within a system that no longer has a transcendental structure. Science replaces science, interpretation generates further interpretation, meaning does not stop, it circulates. Importantly, Derrida does not treat this as a loss. He treats it as an opportunity. Meaning becomes something we engage with, not something we possess. At this point in the essay, Derrida turns to the field of anthropology, particularly the work of Claude Lévi-Strauss. He chooses Lévi-Strauss not because he is weak, but because he is the one of the strongest representative of structuralist thought. By reading Lévi-Strauss carefully, Derrida shows how structuralism unintentionally exposes its own limit. One key example is the nature culture binary. Levi Strauss treats nature as universal and culture as learned. But when he analyzes the incest taboo, a contradiction emerges. The incest taboo appears universal, which makes it seems natural. Yet it also functions as a social rule, which makes it cultural. The binary collapses from within. Through this, Derrida demonstrates the binary oppositions, the backbone of structuralist thinking, are inherently unstable. They depend on distinctions that cannot hold consistently. This leads us to another major concern, the problem of origins. Structural anthropology searches for origin moments, pure beginnings, universal laws. Derrida challenges this desire for origins by arguing that every origin is constructed retrospectively. There is no pure starting point. Origins exist because we need them, not because they are real. Levi Strauss introduces the figure of the engineer and bricklayer to explain different modes of thinking. The engineer is imagined as someone who creates concepts from the scratch, while the bricolage works with materials already available. Derrida dismantles this distinction by arguing that engineer is a myth. No thinker exists outside language. All thinking is bricolage. Bricolage then becomes a key concept. It refers to thinking that uses inherited tools, borrowed concept, and historical language. The human sciences cannot escape this condition. There is no pure system, no neutral vocabulary, no center outside history. As Derrida moves towards language itself, he makes one of the most radical claims. Signs do not point to presence, they point to other signs. Meaning is endlessly deferred. This process of deferral and deference is what Derrida famously called deference. This insight dismantles logocentrism, the Western tendency to privilege speech over writing, presence over absence, origin over play. In a decentered structure. Writing is not inferior, absence is not lack, and meaning is never final. Interpretation therefore becomes open-ended. No reading can claim absolute authority. Criticism becomes creative engagement rather than search for single truth. At this stage, Derrida introduces what he calls the double gesture. He simultaneously critiques metaphysical certainty and affirms play and openness. This is deconstruction in action, not destruction, but careful and doing. Crucially, Derrida is not a nihilist. He does not say that meaning disappears, he says that meaning is produced, negotiated, and historically situated. This demands ethical responsibility rather than intellectual laziness. The implications for the human sciences are profound. Knowledge is not objective, machinery. It is constructed, historical, and unstable. Binary oppositions are not neutral, they are the structures of power that privilege one term over another. Deconstruction exposes and unsettles these hierarchies. The event Derrida describes then is not an ending, it is a beginning. It marks the collapse of metaphysical guarantee and the rise of free play. Philosophy, literary criticism, anthropology, linguistics, and cultural theory are permanently transformed. Derrida ends not with despair but with affirmation. He invites us to embrace plurality, to celebrate multiplicity, and to think without the desire for a final center. This is the joy of the post structuralist thinking. To conclude, remember this: structures are not fixed, centers are not historical, Centers or historical fictions, signs or relational, meaning is unstable and interpretation is open ended. Derrida's essay does not give us answers, it gives us a new way of thinking. And if this session has unsettled you just as a little, then Derrida would say it has done exactly what it was meant to do. Thank you